Good very early morning, everybody. I'm Steven Ruderman, and I can't sleep. So here is your very late night or very early in the morning Insomniac Lunatic Fringe Giants postgame show. It is 2:17 a.m. Okay, you got me there. I was looking at a wrist with no watch on it, and I cheated because, the time on my computer. So I've been at this a long time. This is my 23rd season as a full-time knowledgeable baseball fan slash baseball lifer. And I've tried to tell myself, or I have told myself over the last several years that, I've been through this so many times and I'm not going to let the emotions and the rigors of a season get to me, even when the Giants are at their highest and lowest moments. I apologize, but it turned out I was really lying to myself. The Giants had a great spring and then got off to their 8-1 start. And I truly thought this was going to be a 95 to 100 win team. Sam Lubin, who you've seen on this show twice, who hosts the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap Saturdays, not from 9 a.m. to noon on 95.7 The Game, said, I'm thinking they're an 85 to 90 win team. Well, he was so right. Throughout some of the Giants' toughest stretches this year, maybe I got a little bit concerned, but I always believed that they would come back, that they would get their act together and get hot and go on a run at some point. And for the most part, I still believe that. But one thing I'll say about the 2025 San Francisco Giants is that they're really good at toying with your emotions. But I got to be honest here. Tonight, or shall we say last night, was rock bottom. The Giants have now lost 6 in a row, 7 of their last 8 since Patrick Bailey's magical walk-off inside the park home run against the Phillies, and have fallen to just 3 games over 500 for the first time since April Fool's Day. Giants got a 1-0 lead, and then Hayden Birdsong, just what can I say other than what an absolute nightmare for Hayden Birdsong. So got off to a great start in the bullpen, had a great first few starts, and then has really struggled as of late. Had a better outing against the A's on July 6th, only gave up a run in Sacramento. And so he makes the start tonight. Immediately walks 3 straight guys to load the bases, throws one down the middle, gapper into right center field, 3-run score, walks another guy, hits a guy, and just 6 batters into the game without even getting a man out, Hayden Birdsong is done. And it would only get worse for the Giants. Ronald Acuna scored all the way from first on a base hit to right center field. Later in the game, what looked like a routine fly ball to deep left center field. There's a miscommunication between Elliot Ramos in left and Jung Hoo Lee in center. And then the ball falls right in front of Lee. This is truly rock bottom. And I'm not going to lie, I truly am concerned. The Giants are now 3.5 games back of the Padres for the third wildcard spot. The National League is fairly strong this season. You've got some good teams they're not going to crash and burn. Maybe the Padres, just because of the poor clubhouse chemistry they have down in San Diego. Maybe the Mets. Juan Soto's been a real cancer in the clubhouse this year, and they've had a real rough go of things since the beginning of June. But if the Giants don't get their act together soon, they're going to face a real uphill battle in the final 2 months of the season. And to be honest, this isn't the greatest team on paper. This year's Giants have been the same as the teams of the last 3 years. Mediocre to solid, a team that's capable of winning 85 to 90 games, but it's depending on how things go. Injuries, how they're managed, how they're run. I think Melvin's done a good job running the ship. I'm not one of those guys who thinks we need to fire Bob Melvin after just 2 years. To be honest, the Giants haven't had a manager last less than 4 years since 1985. I think it was Jimmy Davenport who was managing the team that season. Let me look that up. Yeah, I was right. And the Giants went through a bunch of different managers. Frank Robinson was fired in August of 1984. Danny Ozark took over and managed the rest of that season. Davenport managed through most of 85, and then Roger Craig took over. Since then, the Giants have not had a manager manage less than 4 years. Roger Craig managed for 7 plus, Dusty Baker for 10, Felipe Alou for 4, Bochy for 13, Gabe Kapler for 4, and you really want to fire Bob Melvin after 2? Come on. This isn't the best team on paper. Farhan really didn't build that great of a roster. Basically, we're still feeling the remnants of Farhan's tenure. All the teams the Giants had under Farhan were teams that were mediocre to solid at best, that could get hot and have a real fluke season like 2021 where they won 107 games. And this team really needs to get better. And the fact of the matter is, I'm going to be blunt, the Giants need to rebuild. They have a horrible farm system. They have very little in terms of real top-notch prospects waiting in the wings. You got Bryce Eldridge. Carson was not like a lot of Giants prospects in the last 15 years. Was ranked high, but has really fallen off. And I have begun to think that the Giants should stand pat at the deadline. Don't give up any more of your prospects. Buster needs to start the rebuild, because this team is getting older. And what my guess is, can't predict the future. I have a really horrible, unhealthy fixation on predicting the future. But if I am to predict the future, I think the Giants will have a similar kind of team next year. You know, a 500 team that could win 85 to 90 games. A 500 team on paper that could win 85 to 90 games. And then I have a feeling they will really fall off in 2027 and finish 5 to 10 games under 500. You know, maybe go something like 45 and 55, because that season may only be 100 games. And same thing in 2028, in which I imagine we'll get a full 162 game season. Though it wouldn't hurt to not maybe take a few games off for the Olympics. We can get into the whole 2028 Olympics thing in another show. But the fact of the matter is, this current core of players the Giants have, it's not going to last them that much longer. They're already not the greatest. It's already not the greatest core, but it's a good enough core to get you in contention and give you a shot at sliding into that third wild card spot. But they're also getting old, and it's not going to last that much longer. Buster needs to start the rebuild now. And I do not believe in the teardown rebuilds. I hate that teams just focus a season on rebuilding. I'm personally offended by it, because at the beginning of a season, you're 0-0 like anyone else, like everyone else, and anything can happen. But you can rebuild and contend simultaneously. The Dodgers did that in the 2000s. The Giants kind of tried doing that in Farhan's first 3 years, and it kind of worked in 2021. And that, honestly, and Sam has said this a lot, Ben Romero has said this, that the 2021 season was the worst thing that could have happened, because the Giants were in rebuild mode, And then they won 107 games out of nowhere, and they thought, as did I, that they had the team to compete for many years going forward. It goes back to my earlier point about lying to myself and telling myself that I've been around this game long enough to get through the emotions of a 162 game marathon without letting the emotions take over and letting my opinions shift, and without getting too high or too low on a team. But it really was the worst thing that could have happened in an ironic way. And we're at a point right now where you have an aging, mediocre to solid core, and where they really do need to rebuild. And they, as I said, rebuild and compete at the same time. And you can develop a nice young core to be ready by 2029, 2030. That could give you many years of success and maybe another title. Who knows? Maybe another, or actually an actual dynasty. The only reason I don't consider the 2010s one a dynasty is because of the losing season in 2013. They had finished over 500 in that year, I'd consider it a dynasty. And I'm hoping Buster has a long-term plan. The problem with Sabian, with Brian Sabian, and frankly with this ownership group, is they have never, ever planned for the long run. In the 2000s, Peter McGowan, Larry Baer, and Brian Sabian thought that Barry Bonds would keep hitting home runs forever and they didn't need to worry about anything else, ignoring the fact that Bonds was in his late 30s and about to be and turning 40, and ignoring the fact that, well, in just a few years Bonds is going to be gone and you're going to need to plan for that. And then that resulted in 4 straight losing seasons from 2005 to 2008. In the 2010s, Larry Baer and Brian Sabian thought they could just keep winning world championships every even year. And then that resulted in the rough stretch from 2017 to 2020. And in a way, the mediocre stretch they've been going through the last few years. I'm hoping, and Buster hasn't been around long enough for me to know whether he's good at planning for the long run or not. And he's given no indications of whether he's good at it or not. So I have no idea. But I really hope Buster has a plan for the long run. I get it. The Giants are in win now mode, as they should be. The Giants have only gone to the playoffs once in the last 9 years. Attendance has been way down, though it's been climbing back up this year, and they feasibly could hit 3 million. They'll come close to hitting 3 million this year, which they last did in 2018. The fans are desperate for something to cheer about. And so I get that you want to go out all out on this season. But you don't want to do so. You do not want to do so by jeopardizing the future. And if Buster doesn't start the rebuild soon, then we could be in for many more years of mediocre baseball at best, but most likely bad baseball, and a long stretch of losing seasons. So as I said, the time to rebuild is now. So why don't we go over the actual game? I didn't keep score tonight, so we'll follow along on game day. The Giants, of course, scored their run in the first inning, which felt like a different vibe from the Toronto series. But then I remembered, right, Willie Adames hit the home run in the first inning on Saturday. I don't remember if the Giants struck first on Sunday because the game was on Roku and I was busy umpiring 3 games. So I apologize for that. And then the bomb of the first. And I already told you what happened. Birdsong can't find the zone. Walks the first 3 guys. Throws one down the pipe to Drake Baldwin, who doubles into the gap in right center, walks Ozzy Albies, and hits Sean Murphy. So it's 5-1. And then, one thing is the Giants have been consistent with this year. Steven Risotto said this to me in the press box back in April, is that the Giants have always had a response. And to give it to the Giants, they never gave up tonight. Giants immediately had a rally going in the second. Wilmer Flores, lined a double down the right field line. Casey Schmidt gets a bloop single to left, and Patrick Bailey gets Wilmer in on a sac fly. But Jung-Hoo Lee flies out. Elliot Ramos grounds into a fielder's choice. Third inning, Rafael Devers walks. Adames hits a base hit to left. Matt Chapman grounds into a double play. Fourth inning, Wilmer leads off with a single, but, nothing comes of it. And then the bottom of the fourth, of course, was really ugly. That was when Ronald Acuna scored all the way from first on a base hit to right center. I've watched that play a few times. I'm trying to figure out, did Jung-Hoo Lee just not show enough urgency? Was it just great base running by Acuna? Freddie Gonzalez had the stop sign. He was just like this. My dad, a longtime baseball guy, knows the game very well, that perhaps it may have been a deke, that someone like Acuna, as a lot of top-notch players like himself may have the ability to run through a stop sign. He may have been granted the ability by his manager, Brian Snitker, to run through a stop sign if he feels like he can score. I did feel like there was a lack of urgency, but I think it was also great base running. It was a lack of urgency by the Giants and great heads-up base running by Ronald Acuna, one of the best players in the game. A guy who I actually, believe it or not, think the Giants could have gotten for Madison Bumgarner after 2017. And I'm not the only person who's been around the game that believes that. Anyway, don't need to dwell on that. Then, of course, I think, was it the sixth inning when Jung-Hoo Lee had that ball fall in front of him? It was just an ugly, ugly, ugly night for the Giants. Still, they didn't give up. They ended up scoring 5 runs. They never went down quietly, but something's got to change, and it's got to change fast, or else they're going to find themselves going into August anywhere between 5 to 7 games back of the third wild card and facing a real uphill battle if they want to get to the playoffs. And teams like the Padres and Mets could feasibly collapse, which could give the Giants an end. But the Brewers, of course, they're white hot. They've won 11 in a row. They're just a really good team. They've had an incredible run at things. I do have a hard time believing, though, that the Padres or Mets would have an epic collapse. Maybe I wouldn't rule it out, but let's not get to the point where you have to rely on the Giants having a great final 2 months and the Padres and or Mets collapsing. Let's not get there. The Giants, they need to get their act together, and they need to get their act together soon, because I am worried. And right now, if I were to guess, I would say the Giants, I would actually say their playoff percentage chance is probably slipping, but probably has slipped a bit below 50%. I'm going to put it at an honest 45%. Now we'll look at the standings. The Dodgers, by the way, they got back. They won. They came back and won. They were losing to the Twins earlier. And I thought they were going to lose again. They got swept by they've had a real rough go of things. They had lost, I think, they came in having lost 10 of 12, and almost was 11 out of 13, but they came back and won. So they're 3.5 up on the Padres and 7 up on the Giants. So I'll pull the standings up there for you. You can see the National League West, the Dodgers 59-42, Padres 55-45, 3.5 back, the Giants 52-49, 7 back, the Diamondbacks 50-51, 9 back. And then, of course, we're going to look at the wild card. And there you have it. The Brewers have toppled the Cubs for first place. The Cubs have held at least a tie for first place, I think, since April 10th or April 11th. They were ahead of the Royals early in the game, but the Royals ended up blowing them out at Wrigley Field. But as you can see, the three teams at the top, the Brewers, Dodgers, and the Phillies, who lead their divisions, they're not going anywhere. Cubs, they're not going anywhere either. The Mets or Padres could feasibly collapse. The Mets and or Padres could feasibly collapse. But again, let's not get into a situation where the Giants have to have an awesome final 2 months and one or both of those teams has to collapse. You know, we're right now at the end of the part of the season where you're establishing your contenders. The contenders have pretty much been established here. And really we're truly going to know at the trade deadline next week who's in it and who's not. And of course, the Brewers, Dodgers, Phillies, Cubs, Mets, and Padres, they're all contenders. But right now, if the Giants just 3 games over 500 at 52-49, they're tied with the Reds and the Cardinals. And of course, you have to worry about those teams. One of the big themes here in 2025 has been 500 teams, getting real hot and looking like they're going to be contenders, and then really going into a real tailspin, falling several games under 500, looking like they're going to go nowhere, only for them to get hot again and get back over 500. We've seen numerous teams throughout baseball do that this season. The Reds, the Mariners, the Red Sox, the Twins, and we don't want the Giants to become one of those teams. The Rangers and the Diamondbacks, can't believe I forgot them. But a team I do believe that one of those teams could get hot down the stretch and be in a position to go to the playoffs. And the Reds, the Cardinals, and the Diamondbacks, all are teams I think can. And that's going to make things that even more difficult for the Giants if they want to get to the playoffs. And is more the reason the Giants need to start playing better baseball ASAP. I do feel like the Giants have the pieces to compete, even go all the way. When everything is clicking, this is a pretty unstoppable team. We saw it in April. We saw it when they had their 24-14 start through May 7th. We saw it when the Giants were beating some solid teams. I mean, they had taken 2 or 3 on the road at Wrigley Field. And then would lose 2 or 3 to the White Sox a month later at the south side of Chicago. If this team can really click, special things could happen. And I could see this team dancing on Market Street at the end of the season in another World Championship parade. But sorry to sound like a broken record. They need to get hot, and they need to get hot soon. It's as plain and simple as that. And to be honest, I think the Giants at most should trade for a lineup piece, maybe a starter. But they shouldn't give up any more, at least high-end prospects that could make a real impact in the future. I believe Bryce Eldridge may be coming off the IL this week to play in Sacramento. JT Snow at least said on Twitter that he's going to go to Sacramento to watch him play. That could be something. If the Giants, if he's ready to be called up in August, he could make a real impact. I still believe in this team. I really do. But I do believe right now things are not looking good. And I do believe, you all know what I believe about them needing to get hot soon. So the Giants will be back at it tomorrow night, or shall I say tonight. Game 2 of this 3-game series. It will be Landon Roop on the mound against Davis Daniel. That's right, not Daniel Davis, Davis Daniel. First pitch will be at 4:15 Pacific. The Braves doing the 7:15 local starts, which the Giants used to do on a nightly basis, now only do on Fridays. But they've got to get hot, and they got to get hot soon. See, I said it again. The good news is the Giants' schedule over the next few weeks is not going to be too difficult. You've got, and this is going to be weird, you got a homestand against the Mets and Pirates and then a road trip against the Mets and Pirates. The Pirates, of course, are having an abysmal season. The Mets, as I already said, have been playing really bad baseball since the beginning of June. This is the and I do believe the Giants could get hot on this next homestand. I really do. And this feels a bit like 2014, actually, when, of course, they opted their 42-21 start. And then they had their really rough stretch from June 9th to August 25th. But what fans may forget about that rough stretch was that there were several parts of that stretch in which the Giants would have good weeks. And it would look like things were finally back on track, only for them to have another bad week. And that has happened this year. They had the 7-game winning streak at the beginning of June, going from just 5 games over 500 to 12 games over 500. Now, that one you kind of knew was a fluke because they were very home run happy during that streak. They had their epic win against the Red Sox on Father's Day on June 20, or actually, no, June 22nd. For whatever reason, I was thinking that was Father's Day was June 15th. They had the epic win against the Red Sox on June 22nd, the Slugfest, where they were both hitting home runs and executing the fundamentals, and I thought they were back. Nope. The Giants had the big win in Arizona on July 2nd. Won again on the 3rd. Won 7-9. The walk-off inside the Parker against the Phillies. A big win against the Dodgers to open up the final series of the first half on the 11th. Nope. So we will just have to see what happens. All right. This has been your Insomniac Lunatic French Giants post-game show for Sports Radio Service for my boss, Lee Leonard. I'm Steven Ruderman. Hope you enjoyed my truly insomnic, this is the Insomniac Lunatic Fringe musings tonight. Have a good night, folks, and I will talk to you.